Good morning, everybody. We're live in New York at the Page Society Spring Seminar. Thanks for being with us. This morning I'm with Andy Polansky. He's Chief Executive Officer of Weber Shandwick and the chair of this year's Page Spring Seminar. Thanks for being with us.
Pleasure to be here. It's been a pleasure being the chair of the conference.
So just moments ago, the first session of the day was with Gerard Baker, who's the editor for the Wall Street Journal. Wanted to ask you, there's a wide-ranging conversation about truth and trust and the role not only of communicators to facilitate that process, but also journalists and how they're contending with fake news. What did you hear that was really interesting in that conversation, particularly what communicators might want to take away?
Well, here at Page, we talk about the acceleration of change in all of its manifestations, and certainly that's true as much as any place else in the journalism world. So it was interesting to hear Jerry's perspective on that, how it relates specifically to the journal, of course. And, I think that there's certainly some challenges with respect to business model. He talked about that, the evolution to the subscription-based model behind a paywall. I think we'll see that more and more with other news organizations. He talked about some of those challenges, how it relates to how our member companies interact with the journal, with perhaps fewer resources on the news reporting side. So it's a fascinating time in a lot of respects, challenging in many respects. But I think there's a commitment there. The common denominator or a commitment is to truth-based reporting. And I think that was the spirit of a lot of the conversation I had with Jerry. Everybody in the end is trying to get to that truth and what are the facts. And that's certainly a key role that chief communications officers play.
Yeah, earlier this morning, the Page Society issued a statement on exactly this. You'll be able to find Roger Bolton, our president, actually just in a few minutes taking the stage to talk about that. But it's an issue that is certainly coming up again and again, kind of truth and trust. Switching gears, we kicked off the conference yesterday morning, and we welcomed Chris Langdon and Nick Gowing, who are the co-authors of Thinking the Unthinkable. And they asked us to do exactly that, not only think about things that we're not thinking about, but specifically kind of think about the unpalatable and some of the barriers that we face in trying to get into that mindset. What did you hear in terms of how we as communicators should be doing more for leading our enterprises into thinking more creatively or strategically about stuff we're just not thinking about right now?
Yeah. Well, look, I think that it's a challenging environment in so many respects, and you look at the complexity of the issues all around the globe, and certainly the role of the chief communications officer, other senior communications professionals, is in essence to be the navigator, and really to be an effective navigator, you have to have a worldview. You really have to understand all of the potential scenarios that a company is going to need to confront, really across all of its stakeholder groups. And I think that it's always the unknown unknowns that can really set companies back. And I think it's just incumbent upon us to help companies create the appropriate culture of preparedness, to really consider what all those potential scenarios are, perhaps thinking beyond even what we see on the horizon.
Great. So the theme, again, of this year's conference is all about activism and all the various forms that it comes in. The other two sessions we had yesterday afternoon were about employee activism and shareholder activism, which are two types of activism that are probably becoming more prevalent recently, just in the environment that we're in. What did you take away from those conversations? And what is kind of the message for how communicators can help their organizations navigate both of those areas?
Well, certainly from the employee activism standpoint, it was pretty clear that a resounding theme was more empathy and more listening would be critical. We all know that employees are on the front lines, really the best brand ambassadors for a company. And the reality is they are out there talking about the company. They feel pretty passionate one way or another about their role in the company, what the company's all about in terms of the purpose and how it goes to market. So to really listen hard and hear clearly, as Bill Wilson always says, is really critical, particularly with any constituency group, but particularly with your employees. And we've seen so many examples of employees We talked about in the context of employee resource groups and how there's sort of an activist mentality to try to force change, drive change. Those are very positive things. I think one misnomer, whether you're talking about stakeholder activism or employee activism, there's a tendency, I think, sometimes, and maybe a natural one, to think that activism is a negative thing. But we all know that activism can often be a force for positive change. And that's certainly true with respect to employee activism. Depending on who you ask with respect to stakeholder activism, there might be people who have different views depending on their position on one side of the issue or the other. But it's really a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah, as I was listening to those conversations, on the employee side, I was thinking about the Page principles. The company's true character is expressed by its people. So when you see employees taking a more proactive stance and insisting that their organizations speak out on social issues and take action on those things, and on the activist investor side, Bill Wall, who moderated that session, talked about conducting public relations as if the whole company depends on it,
right?
Because in those cases it can. Right. So it's interesting to see those Page principles kind of being woven throughout these discussions.
And we had an interesting close yesterday, of course, with Farouk Kathwari, the Chairman Chief Executive Officer of Ethan Allen, who really gave an inspiring talk. I know we broadcast that live, so for folks who didn't see it, and really he talked about how you embed activism as part of the culture. And he's out there on a variety of different issues, and it's not about him, it's about the company. And it's very integrated and very powerful.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I know you got to get back because you're helping run this conference.
I am.
Andy Polansky, Chief Executive Officer of Weber Shandwick.
Pleasure.
We will be back shortly with Roger Bolton talking about the Page Society Statement on Truth in Journalism. Thank you very much.